We pick it up in Luke chapter 22, verse 66. At daybreak, the council of the elders of the people, both the chief priests and the teachers of the law, met together, and Jesus was led before them. "If you are the Messiah," they said, "tell us." Jesus answered, "If I tell you, you will not believe me. And if I ask you, you would not answer. But from now on, the Son of Man will be seated at the right hand of the mighty God." And they all asked, "Are you then the Son of God?" And he replied, "You say that I am." Then they said, "Why do we need any more testimony? We have heard it from his own lips." Then they led Jesus from the house of Caiaphas to the governor's headquarters. It was early morning. They themselves did not enter the governor's headquarters, that's Pilate's headquarters, so that they would not be defiled, but could eat the Passover. So Pilate went outside to them and said, "What accusations do you bring against this man?" And they answered him, "If this man were not doing evil, we would not have delivered him over to you." And Pilate said to him, "Well, take him yourselves and judge him by your own law." The Jews said to him, "It is not lawful for us to put anyone to death." This was to fulfill the words that Jesus had spoken to show by what kind of death he was going to die. When Judas, who had betrayed him, saw that Jesus was condemned, he was seized with remorse and returned the 30 pieces of silver to the chief priests and the elders. "I have sinned," he said, "for I have betrayed innocent blood." "What is that to us?" they replied. "That's your responsibility." So Judas threw the money into the temple and left. Then he went and hanged himself. The chief priest picked up the coins and said, "It is against the law to put this into the treasury, since it is blood money." So they decided to use the money to buy the potter's field as a burial place for foreigners. That is why it has been called the field of blood to this day. Then what was spoken by Jeremiah the prophet was fulfilled. They took the 30 pieces of silver, the price set on him by the people of Israel, and they used them to buy the potter's field, as the Lord commanded me. And they began to accuse him, saying, "We have found this man subverting our nation. He opposes payment of taxes and Caesar and claims to be a Messiah, a king." So Pilate entered his headquarters again and called Jesus and said to him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" And Jesus answered, "Do you say this of your own accord, or did others say it to you about me?" And Pilate answered, "Am I a Jew? Your own nation and the chief priests have delivered you over to me. What have you done?" And Jesus answered, "My kingdom is not of this world. If my kingdom were of this world, my servants would have been fighting that I might not be delivered over to the Jews. But my kingdom is not from the world." And then Pilate said to him, "So you are a king?" And Jesus said, "You say that I'm a king, and for this purpose I was born, and for this purpose I have come into the world, to bear witness to the truth. Everyone who is of the truth listens to my voice." And Pilate said to him, "What is truth?" When he was accused by the chief priests and the elders, he gave no answer. And then Pilate asked him, "Don't you hear the testimony they are bringing against you?" But Jesus made no reply, not even to a single charge, to the great amazement of the governor. Then Pilate announced to the chief priests and the crowd, "I find no basis for charge against this man." But they insisted, "He stirs up the people all over Judea by his teaching. He started in Galilee and has come all the way here." On hearing this, Pilate asked if the man was a Galilean. When he had learned that Jesus was under Herod's jurisdiction, he sent him to Herod, who was also in Jerusalem at that time. When Herod saw Jesus, he was greatly pleased, because for a long time he had been wanting to see him. From what he had heard about him, he hoped to see him perform a sign of some sort. He plied him with many questions, but Jesus gave him no answer. The chief priests and the teachers of the law were standing there, vehemently accusing him. And that day Herod and Pilate became friends. Before this they had been enemies. And Pilate called together the chief priests, the rulers, and the people, and said to them, "You brought me this man as one who was inciting the people to rebellion. I've examined him in your presence and have found no basis for your charges against him. Neither has Herod, for he sent him back to us. As you can see, he has done nothing to deserve death. Therefore I will punish him and then release him." Now it was the governor's custom at that festival to release a prisoner chosen by the crowd. At that time they had a well-known prisoner whose name was Barabbas. So when the crowd had gathered, Pilate asked them, one do you want me to release to you, Barabbas or Jesus, who is called the Messiah?" For he knew it was out of self-interest that he handed Jesus over to him. When Pilate was sitting on the judge's seat, his wife sent him a message. "Don't have anything to do with this innocent man, for I have suffered a great deal today in a dream because of him." But the chief priests and the elders persuaded the crowd to ask for Barabbas and to have Jesus executed. "Which of the two do you want me to release to you?" asked the governor. "Barabbas," they answered. "What shall I do then with Jesus, who's called the Messiah?" Pilate asked. And they all answered, "Crucify him." "Why? What crime has he committed?" asked Pilate. But they shouted all the louder, "Crucify him!" When Pilate saw that he was getting nowhere, but that instead an uproar was starting, he took water and washed his hands in front of the crowd. "I am innocent of this man's blood," he said. It is your responsibility." And all the people answered, "His blood is on us and on our children." And wanting to satisfy the crowd, he released Barabbas to them, but he had Jesus flogged. Then the governor's soldiers took Jesus in the praetorium and gathered the whole company of soldiers around him. They stripped him and put a scarlet robe on him, and then they twisted together a crown of thorns and set it on his head. They put a staff in his right hand, and then they knelt in front of him and mocked him. "Hail, King of the Jews," they said. And they spit on him, and they took the staff and struck him on the head again and again. Pilate went out again and said to him, "See, I am bringing him out to you, that you may know that I find no guilt in him." So Jesus came out wearing the crown of thorns and the purple robe. And Pilate said to them, "Behold the man." When the chief priests and the officers saw him, they cried out, "Crucify him! Crucify him!" And Pilate said to them, "Take him yourselves and crucify him, for I find no guilt in him." And then the Jews answered him, "We have a law, and according to that law he ought to die, because he has made himself the Son of God." And when Pilate heard this statement, he was even more afraid. He entered his headquarters again and said to Jesus, "Where do you come from?" But Jesus gave him no answer. So Pilate said, "You will not speak to me? Do you not know that I have the authority to release you and authority to crucify you?" And Jesus answered him, "You would have no authority over me at all unless it was given you from above. Therefore, he who delivered me over to you has the greater sin." From then on, Pilate sought to release him, but the Jews cried out, "If you release this man, you are not a friend of Caesar's. Everyone who makes himself a king opposes Caesar." So when Pilate heard these things, he brought Jesus out and sat down on the judgment seat at a place called the Stone Pavement, and in Aramaic, Gabbatha. Now it was a day of preparation of the Passover. It was about the 6th hour. He said to the Jews, "Behold your king!" And they cried out, "Away with him! Away with him! Crucify him!" And Pilate said to them, "Shall I crucify your king?" And the chief priest answered, "We have no king but Caesar." So he delivered him over to them to be crucified. Here we go from that mock trial to more of a specific legal trial, that now he goes to Caiaphas, and now Caiaphas takes him over to Pilate. And again, in every situation, Jesus is not going to argue with the people. He's not going to worry about what their accusations are, because they don't mean nothing. He is simply going to speak the truth. But look what the religious leaders are trying to do with Pilate. They tell him, "It is not lawful for us to put anyone to death." Yes, it is. They can stone people to death. But they didn't want him to be stoned to death. And really, what Jesus was going to the cross, the only people that could crucify him was the Roman people, the Roman governor. And that is why they say this. Then as we look, Jesus tells Pilate, "You say that I'm a king, and for this purpose I was born, and for this purpose I have come into the world, to bear witness to the truth. And everyone who is of the truth listens to my voice." And Pilate said, "What is truth?" In our lives today, the world really does stumble on that. I mean, think about it this way. If everybody thinks that I'm right based upon my pride, then they're going to think that I know the best thing. And if I know the best thing, but you know the best thing, this person knows the best thing, and that person knows the best thing, and everybody, quote unquote, knows the best thing now, I agree with Pilate. What is the truth? But there is a truth. It's Jesus. That's what we need to come to understand. Not our own pride, not our own sinfulness, Jesus. And look what the people, they know that he probably is speaking the truth and there's something different, but they stir up so much of the crowd. Okay, and what do? They say, hey, Jesus stirs up the people. But then later on, it's the chief priests and the elders stirring up and persuading the crowds to say, release Barabbas, yell crucify. And the people give into it. It's the religious leaders that are lying and saying Jesus is doing this stuff, but really in the end, they're doing it. We need to look at our own selves and understand that truth as well. Now look at Herod. He's brought to Herod, and Herod's like, oh, cool, I want to see him do some really cool signs. Jesus is like, I'm not going to give that to you. I'm not even going to answer you, because that's all you want. A lot of times in our lives, that's all we want Jesus to do is give some sign and a cool thing for us, a miracle. And if he doesn't, then But yet again, even though we have this on a regular basis, Jesus still goes through this. Pilate says he has done nothing to deserve death, because he doesn't. But you know who does deserve death? We do. But yet God sends his son to die for us. And then now Pilate says, well, his blood's on you, and all the people answer, his blood is on us and all our children. Again, a statement that is prophetic. They didn't understand the truth of it at that time, but it is. I mean, if you look back, you Jewish people, you Israelites, look back at the Passover that you're about to celebrate tomorrow. Look at this. It's the Passover lamb that saved you. It is that blood that saved you at that moment. That blood now is going to save you through Jesus, and you're missing all of it. All they wanted was Jesus to be beaten, and nothing would satisfy them except for him to die. Pilate, now, again, if you think Pilate didn't want him to die, and looks like he's a pretty innocent man. Well, no, he's not. Okay, Pilate, first of all, has Jesus flogged. Flogged means you got whipped. Okay, the custom at that time was 40 minus 1, 39 lashings, because that 40th lashing typically killed somebody. So I'm sure he got that punishment. And this wasn't just your Indiana Jones whip. This had like a long aspect of it with little spikes and stuff that ripped and tore through the skin. I mean, think about this. Up to this point in time, Jesus was beat over and over again on the head. Jesus was put on with a robe and mocked and all these things, spit on, all this stuff was going on. Now he's flogged and he's whipped. I don't even know how he's standing at this point in time. As we're going to read in the book of Isaiah at the end, you couldn't even recognize his face. He was so disfigured from this beating that you couldn't even recognize who he was. And yet he continued to do it over and over for us. Notice what they say in John 19. We have a law, and according to that law, he ought to die because he has made himself the Son of God. No, he didn't make himself. He is the Son of God. Then this is where Pilate has his issues. You see, Pilate's governor, and Pilate wants to stay as governor of this area. And already the Jewish people went and complained to Caesar about Pilate. And so he was already on that last leash. And now the religious leaders, because Pilate was not doing what they wanted him to do, say, if you release this man, you are not a friend of Caesar's. And everyone who makes himself a king is opposed to Caesar. And now at this point in time, Pilate has two choices: give in to them or lose his governorship. But he doesn't want to let that governorship go. So fine, go ahead and kill him. And he gives him over to crucify him. And then that religious leader's like, well, Pilate says, shall I crucify your king? And the chief priest yell out, we have no king but Caesar. The religious leaders hated Caesar. But it's amazing how they get with people as long as they have a common enemy. It's happening in our world today, in our country, isn't it? It's amazing how we do this. We get with people that we not necessarily don't like very much, but we get with them as long as we have that common enemy. And really, in the end, we do have a common enemy. It's the devil, but we're not joining together as Christ's people to help one another. We need to truly look at that truth, and that truth is Jesus. Thank you so much for watching our videos. If you like our content, please like, share. It'd be greatly appreciated if you want to help donate and help us to be able to continue to put forth godly content out there. We'd love that as well. And certainly pray that you can go to church. If you're in the Marana area, we're in northwest Tucson, Arizona. If you're here, man, we'd love to have you and see you in service. If not, pray that you can find a local church. I have my bias. I'd prefer you go to an LCMS Lutheran church, but hopefully it's a godly preaching church, and just go and really build your relationship with Christ. So I pray that, and I thank you so much again for watching.